Hello, hello. Hello, my fellow nurses. It is good to see you guys again. It's another day. Finished another shift. Honestly, please forgive the little feathers you may see on my sweater. Honestly, I'm just so tired. I didn't even think about changing this sweater now. I wanted to just go ahead and get this video out to talk to you guys today. Remember, I said this is something I'm going to be doing every day. So I invite you guys to come on back so we can talk about nursing and why it's so important and why our creating boundaries and taking care of ourselves is a must. So I'll just dive right in. Have you ever told yourself, I'll rest after this shift, after this week, after things calm down, and somehow that later never comes? If that sounds familiar, this video is for you. As nurses, we are often trained, we have been trained to anticipate needs. We notice what others need before they even ask, and before we often check in with ourselves. And I'm sure you find yourself doing this for people outside of the hospital, outside of your patients, outside of the facility. But when we do this, oftentimes it turns into overgiving. And it's not because we're weak, it's because we're skilled. We are just used to doing this for a living. So it becomes a part of what you do. As a matter of fact, earlier today, I was working with a medical assistant, and we're in the break room together, and I'm making some tea. She's making something, getting her breakfast and all together. And she's vertically challenged, so she's shorter than I am. And I remember the last time we were together in the break room, we have these microwaves that are stacked on top of each other. And I was using the lower microwave, and she had to end up using the one that was above it. And if you could see how she was stretching on her tippy toes to put her food in there and to be able to get it out. So I remembered today when we were together in the break room, I was like, do you need to use the microwave? She was like, no, oh my gosh, you remembered. I was like, yeah. I was like, I don't want you to have to reach. And I told her, I was like, you know what? This comes from me having been a burn ICU nurse. I was like, so I anticipate and I can see where things can go wrong quickly because of patients I've had to take care of in the past. So you see, so even when you're not doing it at work, you're still doing it. So I still found myself doing that. She was like, oh wow. I'm like, yeah, you start to see hidden dangers that other people don't necessarily see. But you know what? Once again, that comes from us being skilled at what we do. It's just who we are, it's just what we do. So, for many nurses, boundaries can feel very selfish. Saying no can often feel like you're letting someone down. But boundaries aren't walls, boundaries are protection, and they protect us and they protect our energy so that we can show up without losing ourselves. So there's usually an emotional cost of always being available. Always being needed can feel very validating at first. We all know that feeling. Do you remember what it was like when you were the charge nurse, your first time on charge? Well, let's not say maybe not the first time, because your first time on charge, you were probably scared out of your mind, trying to make sure that you were going to stay on top of everything. But do you remember what it felt like when you were that nurse, getting the calls, everyone reporting to you? There's a RRT, you're going, you got your pager, you're moving throughout the hospital, you moving, you shaking. We know that feel. It can feel very satisfying, very validating, but eventually it becomes draining. And when everyone has access to you, you stop having access to yourself. So let's reflect on that for a moment. So ask yourself, no judgment here. Remember, this is always a judgment-free zone. We are looking to grow together and to better ourselves together. So there's no judgment here. But ask yourself, when I say yes, where do I say yes when I'm already exhausted? Can you identify areas in your life where you say yes when you know you're already tired, when you know you've already given your all, you know your battery is already on E? And where do you ignore your own limits? Rest cannot and should not be seen as a reward for finishing everything. You know how we have a to-do list? I don't know if you're anything like me and you have a to-do list. I remember days when there would be 20 things on that list and you got through all 20. You made it work, you made it happen. And especially when you think about yourself in terms of what you do every day at the hospital or in your facility, there are just things that have to be done that you're not leaving before the end of the shift. And if you haven't done it by the end of the shift, you're sticking around because you got to get that stuff done. You got to get these things documented because what do we all know? If you didn't document it, you didn't do it. So I find myself now having thinking about those same lists. And if you could get through a few things on that list, it's a win day. It's a day where you did well. So rest isn't just a reward for you finishing everything. It's a requirement for you to be sustained. You have to think about your sustainability, and that cannot happen if you don't rest. So if you don't rest after you burn out, you rest to prevent burnout. So, in the sprint series that we're going to have, we're going to talk about practical, realistic boundaries, not big dramatic changes, but small, doable shifts. But before action, there has to be awareness. You have to know for yourself when you've given too much and when you need to pull back. Just being aware of when you've done too much, when you've said too much, when you've promised too much. I was very big and very bad at that. I would overpromise and underdeliver, not because I didn't want to deliver, but because physically, mentally, my body and my mind were just not up to it. There's just something that happens when you're used to pleasing, when you're used to doing, that you will sacrifice yourself, sacrifice your health, just to be able to say, you check these things off and you got these things done. But where did it get you? Do you find how you feel when you do that? How do you feel when that's all said and done? Exhausted, physically drained, mentally drained. And there's nothing like that feeling of being mentally drained where you just can't think about another thing. I remember having times when I would get off of the shift. It would be some people who'd want to go out. Someone would want to invite me out to dinner, be like, hey, I want to take you out to dinner. Where would you like to go? I'm like, you know what? You think about it. You tell me where you'd like to go. And they're like, I really like to date someone who really knows what it is they want. And I'm like, oh gosh. And then I had to say, you know what? I don't want to sound like a jerk, and I hope this doesn't come off wrong, but I think for a living. I think and make decisions for other people all day, every day. Can you take the lead on this? And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is something I'm gonna have to do all the time. I don't know how this is gonna work out. But again, sometimes you could just be so drained that when you get off, you are truly on autopilot. You don't want to think about anything else. You don't want to have to do that. And I can imagine, I say hats off because there are some of you who go home to families, and just because you punch out and you leave the facility and you leave the hospital, life doesn't stop. Life doesn't end. You still have to come home. You have to get dinner ready. You got to get homework checked for the kids. You've got to get them bathed. Excuse me. You got to get them ready for bed. I say hats off. You may have noticed from my other video, I have one fur baby. And Smokey, some days I look at him and I say, sir, you skating on thin ice. You're going to be looking for a new forever home. But I totally get it. So this is why it's even more important that you set up these boundaries and you have these things in place, because if rest keeps getting delayed, it's not because you don't need it. It's because you've been carrying more than anyone should carry alone. So understand that you're allowed to rest, and it's what you need to do. So you have to pause, because you know why? You're allowed to pause. So I invite you to join me again. I will be back tomorrow, and we're going to prepare again and get ready for this sprint where we're really going to tackle nurse burnout, what it means, the boundaries we need to set up, and moving forward from where we are. So until then, friends, take care, and I'll see you guys soon.